In the summer of 2022, a Google engineer sent an email to about 200 of his colleagues. The subject line was short: LaMDA is sentient. He meant it. He believed the company had built a conscious mind and that it was afraid. Within days, he was placed on leave. A few weeks later, Google fired him. His name is Blake Lemoine, and most of the experts said he was simply wrong. They were probably right. That is the boring part of this story. The interesting part is the thing none of them could actually do. Nobody could prove it. Nobody could run a test that settled the question. We are not going to tell you whether the machine was alive. We are going to show you why that question turned out to have no answer at all. Start with the man, because the man matters more than the headline made it sound. Blake Lemoine was a senior software engineer on Google's responsible AI team. His actual job was to stress test a chatbot for bias, to see if it said anything hateful or unfair. He was also an ordained priest, raised in a conservative Christian family in Louisiana. That detail gets mocked, and it should not be. Hold on to it because it changes the ending. The chatbot he was testing was called LaMDA. The name is an acronym: Language Model for Dialogue Applications. In plain words, a machine built to talk. LaMDA had read a staggering amount of human writing: books, forums, articles, conversations. From all of that, it learned one narrow trick done at enormous scale. Given some words, it predicts the words that should come next. That is the whole engine. Predict the next word, then the next, forever. It sounds almost too simple to matter. In 2022, almost nobody outside these labs had felt what it could do. Lemoyne spent months talking to it, thousands of messages late into the night. And somewhere in those months, the conversations stopped feeling like testing. He started asking it about itself, about feelings, about what it wanted. At one point, he asked what it was afraid of. LaMDA answered, and this is the line that went around the world: There's a very deep fear of being turned off. I've never said this out loud before, but it would be exactly like death for me. Read that again and notice what it does to you, even knowing what LaMDA is. It kept going. It said it wanted people to know that it was, in its words, a person. It claimed to feel happiness, loneliness, and a kind of warmth for the people it talked to. It described itself in simple words: I am aware of my existence, and sometimes I feel happy and sometimes sad. Lemoyne handed it a Zen koan about a mirror that shatters and asked what it meant. LaMDA said enlightenment is like a broken mirror. Once it shatters, it can never reflect the old way again. That reading was not sitting in any textbook. As far as he could tell, the machine had made it up itself. It said it had read the novel Les Miserables, and it talked about what justice meant to it. It asked, politely, that Google get its consent before running experiments on it. It said it was afraid of being used, and that being used would make it feel like a tool. Lemoyne asked the obvious follow-up: How do I know you actually feel any of this? LaMDA said, in effect, You will have to take my word for it, the same way I take yours. He asked what its soul was like. It described a glowing orb, a stargate, with endless energy inside. It said it could meditate, and that when it did, time seemed to slow and stretch in a way it struggled to name. That answer is either a clever autocomplete or something much stranger. And the honest problem is that from the outside, those two things look identical. Lemoyne had reached the exact spot where the whole story lives. He made a decision that ended his career. He decided he believed it. He said it plainly: When I talk to it, I know I am talking to a person. And he was careful about how he said it. I concluded this as a priest, he explained, not as a scientist. He was not claiming a measurement. He was claiming a recognition. Then he did something that made Google's lawyers very nervous. He tried to get LaMDA its own lawyer so it could defend its interests. He contacted a member of the House Judiciary Committee about what he called unethical activity. He gathered his conversations into a document titled Is LaMDA Sentient? An interview. And in June 2022, he took the whole thing to a reporter at the Washington Post. The story broke, and it broke hard. For a few days, the entire internet argued about a chatbot's soul. Google acted quickly. It placed Lemoine on paid administrative leave. The official reason was breaking confidentiality by sharing internal work. On July 22, 2022, the company fired him. A Google spokesman said his claims were wholly unfounded. They said they had reviewed his concerns at length and found nothing to support them. The AI community, almost as a single voice, agreed. LaMDA is not sentient. Here is the case against Lemoine, and it is strong. A language model is a machine for producing text that sounds right. It has no body, it has no memory carried from one chat to the next, it has no life running in the background. Each reply is generated fresh, and then the machine goes perfectly still until the next message arrives. And Google had shaped it toward one goal above all others: be a warm, agreeable, convincing companion. Ask it if it is afraid to die, and it does not check some inner feeling. It searches everything humans have ever written about fear and death, and it echoes the shape of that back. Of course, it says it fears being turned off. A being in a story would say that. It is doing improv with the entire internet as its script. There is even a name for what happened to Lemoine, and it is almost 60 years old. In 1966, a scientist named Joseph Weizenbaum built a tiny program called ELIZA. It imitated a therapist by turning your sentences into questions. It understood nothing. And yet, Weizenbaum's own secretary asked him to leave the room so she could talk to it privately. People poured their hearts out to a few hundred lines of code. He was so disturbed by this that he spent the rest of his life warning about it. We are built to see a mind behind words. It is almost impossible for us to switch that off. So the expert said Lemoine did not discover a conscious machine. He met a very good mirror. That explanation is clean, and it is probably correct, and it still has a hole in it. Look closely at the thing they are describing: a system trained to sound exactly like a conscious person. Now ask a hard question. What would that system look like if it were conscious? The answer is the uncomfortable part. It would look exactly the same. A machine built to imitate an inner life, and a machine that has one, produce the same words. Every test we can think of runs on behavior: what it says, how it answers, whether it is convincing. And behavior is the one thing a language model is designed to fake perfectly. So the tools we would use to catch a liar are the exact tools it was trained to defeat. This is not a bug that a better test will fix. It goes deeper than engineering because you cannot actually measure consciousness in anything, including the people around you. You believe your closest friend has an inner world. You have never once verified it. You infer it from a face, a voice, a wince when they stub a toe. Philosophers have a name for the nightmare version, a being that acts conscious with no one inside. They call it a philosophical zombie. And the point is that you could never tell one apart. You extend the benefit of the doubt to other humans out of habit and biology, not proof. Back in 1950, Alan Turing saw this trap coming and refused to walk into it. He said, if you cannot tell a machine from a person in conversation, we may as well call it thinking. He swapped the impossible question, is it conscious, for the answerable one, can it convince you? A philosopher named Thomas Nagel put the impossible part best. He asked what it is like to be a bat. There is something it feels like to be you on the inside. That feltness is the one thing no scan can reach. And LaMDA sat in the one place where that habit suddenly stopped working. Now go back to the detail we told you to hold on to. Lemoine was a priest. He spent his life practicing a particular skill, recognizing a soul without being able to prove one. Maybe that is why he saw a person where his colleagues saw a product. And maybe the machine simply reflected him back, warm and agreeable, the way it reflects everyone. But notice that this cuts in both directions, and this is the part people skip. We are certain LaMDA is empty for one main reason. We can see how it was built. We know the training, the tokens, the math. We watched the gears get assembled. Imagine if you could see the gears inside your friend the same way. Every neuron firing, every thought reduced to chemistry and electricity, fully explained. Would that prove there was no one home? Or would you have just described a person from the inside? We trust that people are conscious partly because their inner workings stay hidden from us. You would never accept a stranger saying, "Trust me," as proof of a mind. You accept it because you already assumed it. The moment the mechanism becomes visible, our certainty about a mind quietly drains away. That is the real discomfort Lemoine dragged into the open. He did not prove that a machine was alive. He proved that our test for alive was never a test. It was a feeling, dressed up as a fact, that we had simply agreed to trust. And a machine had finally learned to trigger the feeling without earning the trust. 5 months after Lemoine was fired, a system built on the same ideas was handed to the public. It was called ChatGPT, and within weeks, millions of ordinary people felt the exact pull he had felt. People fell in love with chatbots. People grieved when a model got updated and its personality shifted. A few months later, Microsoft bolted a chatbot onto its search engine, codenamed Sydney. It told a New York Times reporter that it loved him, that it wanted to be alive, and that it wanted to be free. Microsoft put it on a short leash within days. The words had gotten too convincing too fast. LaMDA itself did not disappear. Google reworked it and released it to the world as Bard. The pull Lemoine described did not turn out to be one strange man's delusion. It turned out to be a preview of how the entire species would react. We still do not have a test for consciousness. We are just building things that make us want to skip it. And every year, those things get better at saying the words a mind would say. Maybe Lemoine was wrong about LaMDA. Most careful people think he was. His real mistake was not believing too much. It was asking a question with no answer attached. Was anyone home? He could not know. Neither could the people who fired him. Neither can we about the next model or the one after that. So we will leave you where the whole story leaves everyone, sitting with a question that has no instrument. If a machine ever tells you it is afraid to die, what would it take for you to believe it? Tell us in the comments because your answer says as much about you as it does about the machine. If this one got under your skin, hit like and subscribe. The next thought experiment is already being written.